After my parents divorced, my daily allowance was only $1. Neither of them wanted me, and I wandered around all day without even a place to sleep. At that time, I stood at the door of my father's new house, holding an old backpack. I hoped my father would take me in for one night. My bag only contained 2 pairs of jeans, a jacket, a community college textbook, and an old file folder given to me by my grandfather when I was born. The door opened. It wasn't my father who opened it, but his wife, Vanessa Carter. She was wearing a silk robe, her hair was shiny, and her nails were red. When she saw me, the smile on her face disappeared. "Why are you here?" she asked. I lowered the backpack a bit. "I don't have a place to stay tonight." She glanced back inside the house. I heard the sound of a piano. I heard a girl's laughter. It was Madison, Vanessa's daughter. She lived in the largest bedroom on the top floor. "That bedroom used to be mine." Vanessa only opened the door halfway, as if afraid the cold air from my body would seep into her new home. "Emily, Richard is very tired. He doesn't want to deal with trouble today," I said. "I'm not trouble. I'm his daughter." Vanessa gave a soft laugh. That laugh was colder than the wind outside the door. "He has a new family now." I gritted my teeth. "I'm only staying one night. He'll leave tomorrow." At that moment, my father came down the stairs. He was wearing a gray sweater and holding a glass of wine. He saw me, and there was no surprise on his face, only impatience. "Emily, didn't I say you should go find your mother? She doesn't want me either," he said. "Then you'll just have to learn to live on your own." I looked at him. "I only ate a discount bread today." He frowned, as if my hunger was embarrassing to him. "You're already 19. Stop using these small things to threaten people." Small things. In his eyes, no bed, no food, no key, none of it mattered. I said, "I can sleep in the garage." Vanessa immediately said, "No, we can't just let people in like that. Madison has an exam tomorrow." I looked at my father. He avoided my eyes. At that moment, I finally understood. The door wasn't closed. The door had never been opened for me. My father took a $1 bill from his wallet and shoved it into my hand. "Take it. Find a job tomorrow. Don't come back anymore." I didn't take it. The money fell to the ground. Vanessa looked at the bill as if it were a dead insect. My Father bent down, picked it up, and forcibly shoved it into my coat pocket. "Don't make a scene." I wanted to laugh. Things were already a scene. I turned and left. The door closed behind me. The warm light inside was cut off. I stood at the bottom of the steps, the wind making my face tingle. I didn't cry. Crying takes strength. That night, I only had the strength to walk. I went to my mother Linda's apartment. She lived in a white apartment in the city center. The lobby downstairs smelled of warmth, with someone waiting to open the door for residents. I didn't have a key card, so I could only press her apartment number. It took her a long time to answer. "Who?" "It's me, Emily." She was silent for a few seconds. "Why are you here?" This question had already been asked once today. "I don't have anywhere to sleep." She sighed. "Emily, it's very late." "I know. It's not convenient here." A man's voice came through the phone. "Linda, who is it?" she whispered. "Nobody. Nobody." I stood at the entrance of the apartment building, looking at my own shadow inside the glass door. Hair messy, coat old, face pale as a wall. "Mom, I can sleep on the sofa." She didn't answer immediately. I heard her close a door, and then her voice turned colder. "Emily, you can't always do this. Your father has his life, and I have my life too. You're an adult now. I have classes tomorrow. Then find a place near the school." "I don't have money." The elevator door opened, and the doorman glanced at me that I lowered my head. My mother said, "I'll transfer you a little." My phone vibrated. $1. I stared at the screen. $1. She said, "Don't waste it. You'll be fine once you find a job." I asked, "You really won't let me go up?" She said, "Don't push me." I hung up the phone. That night, I sat at the bus stop across from my apartment. When the last bus left, the driver glanced at me but didn't stop. The advertisement light next to me was half broken, flickering on and off. I placed the $1 from my father and the $1 transferred by my mother in the palm of my hand. $2. 2 parents. Together, they couldn't afford a hot meal. At 2 in the morning, I walked to the back door of the school library. The door was locked. I went to the 24-hour convenience store. The owner, Mr. Hill, recognized me. I worked there 3 days a week. He saw me with my bag and didn't ask much. "There are old boxes in the warehouse. Don't touch the surveillance. Leave before 6 in the morning." "Thank you." "Emily, don't thank me. I can't have you staying here forever." That I know. The warehouse was small, with the smell of laundry detergent and cardboard. I lay on the ground, using my backpack as a pillow. The fluorescent light hummed. I closed my eyes, but I couldn't sleep. I remembered childhood, when my grandfather Thomas Reed held me on the lakeside. He said, "Emily, you are not a burden to anyone. Remember this." I didn't understand then. Now I think he was lying to me. Before dawn, I got up to wash my face. The light in the convenience store restroom was very white, making me look like a patient that I brushed my hair and put on an apron. At 7:30, the first customers came in. I stood behind the counter, smiling, and said, "Good morning." No one knew I'd slept on the warehouse floor last night. No one needed to know. At 10 in the morning, a man in a black coat walked in. He was tall, with dark brown hair, holding a takeout coffee in his hand. He didn't look like anyone from around here. People from around here only came to the convenience store to buy cigarettes, lottery tickets, or gas. But he stood in front of the shelves, looking at folders and pens for a long time. He bought a black ballpoint pen. When I scanned it, he glanced at me. His eyes were cold, not because he was rude, but as if he was used to judging danger first. "You're Emily Carter?" he asked. My hand paused. "Do you know me?" He didn't answer. Just looked at my name tag. I just saw the name. I handed him the pen. $1.219. He paid but didn't leave. A man walked in through the door at that moment, wearing a dirty jacket and a full beard. He walked straight to the drink counter, picked up a bottle of beer, and twisted off the cap to drink it. I said, "Sir, you need to pay first." He turned around and glared at me. "What business is it of yours?" Mr. Hill wasn't in the store. Another employee was unloading goods in the back. There was only me and the man buying a pen in the store. I pressed the alarm button under the counter. The dirty jacket man walked up to me and placed the empty beer bottle on the counter. "How much?" $3.14. He reached into his pockets and suddenly laughed. "I don't have any money. Just let it go." "No way." He knocked over the beer bottle, spilling the liquid onto the edge of the counter. "Do you think you're so high and mighty?" I didn't say anything. Suddenly, he reached out and grabbed my wrist. "You little girls are the biggest phonies." I winced in pain. The next second, a hand gripped his shoulder. It was the man in the black coat. His voice was calm. "Let go." The man in the dirty jacket turned around and cursed, then swung a punch. The man in the black coat dodged to the side, grabbed his wrist, and pinned him against the shelf. His movements were quick, without any extra expression. "You have two choices," he said. "Let her go, pay, and leave, or you'll let the police see the surveillance." The man in the dirty jacket struggled for a bit but couldn't break free. "Who are you?" "Ethan Walker, a lawyer." The man's face changed. He cursed, dropped a few crumpled bills, and rushed out. I stood behind the counter, my wrist turning red. Ethan Walker released his grip, turned to look at me. "You should call the police." I pressed the button. "Good." He picked up a tissue and wiped the beer off the counter. I said, "You don't need to do that. You're injured." "It's nothing." He looked at me, as if he didn't believe those words. I hate it when people look at me like that. Pitiful, judging, guessing. Every gaze makes me want to hide. "Thank you." I said. "You can finish your shopping and leave." He didn't move. His gaze fell on the old file folder next to my backpack. It was the one I brought back from my father's house. A brown paper bag, the corners worn. After my grandfather passed away, my mother gave it to me, saying it just contained some old photos and useless bills. Ethan stared at the writing on the file folder. I glanced down. The bag was inscribed with my grandfather's handwriting. "For Emily." "Is that yours?" he asked. "Yes." "Can I take a look?" I immediately held the file folder behind my back. "No." He realized he was too abrupt and took a half step back. "Sorry, I wasn't trying to take your things." "Then why did you ask?" He was silent for 2 seconds. "Because I recognized this handwriting." I scoffed. "You just said you didn't know me." "I don't know you, but I know Thomas Reed." I froze. My grandfather's name coming from a stranger's mouth felt like a needle pricking my ear. "Who are you?" I asked. "Ethan Walker." "I just said so." "What is your relationship with my grandfather?" "My mother used to work for him." My heart started to beat faster. "Was she a lawyer? A legal assistant?" I gripped the file folder. "Where is she now?" Ethan's expression changed slightly. "She's dead." The air grew quiet. I didn't know what to say. Finally, I just said, "I'm sorry." He nodded and didn't pick up the topic. "Emily, do you know what's in this file folder?" "Old things." "Have you seen it?" "No." "Now see it." I frowned. "You don't have the right to order me around." "You're right," he said. "But if Thomas Reed left it for you, you'd better look at it today. Not tomorrow, and not later." His words made me uneasy. I opened the file folder. It contained old photos, an unopened letter, a few tax bills, and a document folded many times. I picked up the tax bills first. They had an address written on them. Lakeview Road 17. Taxpayer name, Emily Carter. I stared at that line of text. What does this mean? Ethan picked up the tax bill and glanced at it. His brow furrowed noticeably. "This is a property tax bill." "I know what a tax bill is." "I'm asking why my name is on it." "Because this property might be yours." I chuckled. The laugh was dry. "I slept on the warehouse floor last night. Now tell me. I have a house." "It looks like it." "Impossible. The documents won't become fake just because you think it's impossible." I snatched back the tax bill, my fingers trembling. Lakeview Road. I had been there as a child. My grandfather had a lakeside cabin. My mother said the house had been sold long ago. My father had also said that what was left after my grandfather's death were debts, not assets. They lied to me. I said. The words were light. Light as if they made no sound. Ethan looked at me. "Maybe not just this." I looked up. "What do you mean?" He looked at the folded document inside the file folder. "Did your parents ask you to sign any documents recently?" My throat tightened. "Yes." "When?" "Tomorrow." "Who asked you to sign?" My father said it was a post-divorce financial confirmation document. My mother also asked me to sign, saying it would make everyone easier. Ethan's face turned completely cold. "You can't sign." "Why?" "Because you might not be poor." That I was holding the file folder, feeling the ground shake. He said, You must have been robbed. The bell above the convenience store door rang again. I turned around. Madison Carter was standing at the door. She was wearing a clean white sweater, holding her phone, with a sweet smile on her face. Emily, she said. Dad asked me to pick you up. She saw Ethan, then saw the tax form in my hand. Her smile slowly froze. How did you get that? Madison said the words and immediately shut her mouth. But it was too late. If someone really didn't know a document, they wouldn't ask. How did you get that? I looked at her. Do you know what this is? She quickly recovered her smile. I don't know. I just saw you holding old paper and thought it was some trouble again. You just said that. Emily, you're always like this. You always think the worst of what people say. Ethan stood beside me, saying nothing. His silence was more pressuring than any question. Madison glanced at him. Who are you? Ethan Walker. Our family's business doesn't need outsiders meddling. I laughed. Are you a Carter? Her face flushed. After Vanessa married my father, Madison always liked being called Madison Carter. People at school thought she was truly a Carter's daughter. She never explained. She looked down on me but took my last name. Dad's waiting for you in the car. She whispered. You'd better come out now. Why doesn't he just come in? He doesn't want to lose face here. Then he shouldn't have come. Madison's smile vanished completely. Emily, don't make a scene. You're already embarrassing enough. Her eyes showed no sympathy as she said this. She was dressed neatly, wearing perfume. The scent made me suddenly feel nauseous. I slept on a cardboard box in the warehouse last night. She slept in my room last night. I picked up my backpack. Ethan said quietly. You don't have to go. I have to. Why? Because they'll come again. The third time. Until I face them. He looked at me and nodded. I'll go with you. Madison immediately said. No. I looked at her. Then I won't go. She gritted her teeth. Suit yourself. A black car, her father's, was parked outside the convenience store. The window was lowered. Richard sitting in the driver's seat with a grim expression. Get in. I stood by the car, not moving. Can this be discussed here? He looked at Ethan. Who is this? A lawyer. Her father's expression changed, then quickly returned. Emily, do you now need a lawyer to deal with your own family? Last night you said you had a new family. His eyes twitched at the corner. Don't put on a show out here. I'm not acting. Yesterday you gave me $1, telling me not to come anymore. Madison awkwardly looked at the side of the road. She was afraid someone would hear. Her father opened the car door and got out, lowering his voice. I'm here today to give you a chance. What opportunity? I'll rent you a small apartment. It's not far from the school. I'll pay the rent for the first 3 months. If he had said this yesterday, I might have cried. Now I just feel cold. What are the terms? Father frowned. Do you have to see me this way? Yes. He took a blue folder out of the car. Sign this. Just to confirm you won't get involved in my and your mother's financial dispute. Ethan reached out. Can I see it? Father refused. This is a family matter. Ethan said. She's 19. She has the right to have a lawyer look at any document she has to sign. Father looked at me. Emily, you've been tricked by a stranger. Do you know what he wants from you? I said. I'd rather know what you want from me. His expression darkened. Your mother agreed too. Then let her come. Father took out his phone, dialed a number, and put it on speaker. Mother answered quickly. Richard, what's wrong? Emily won't sign. There was a pause at the other end of the line. Then Mother's voice softened. Emily, darling, are you there? Dear, the word is like hard candy, sweet on the outside, but uncomfortable on the inside. I am. Your father just wants to handle things properly. You know how tired our divorce is. If you sign, everyone can relax a bit. Will I be relaxed? Of course. Your father will help arrange accommodation. I'll try to help as much as I can too. You transferred me $1 yesterday. She paused. That was just because it wasn't convenient for me at the time. It wasn't convenient for me to come upstairs either. Her voice turned cold. Emily, don't say everything. You're hurting people like this. I looked at my phone. What hurts is the truth. Not that I said it. My father hung up abruptly. Enough. I said. Leave the documents. I'll decide after I read them. No. Then I won't sign. My father lost patience. Who do you think you are? I didn't answer immediately, because I didn't know either. Before yesterday, I thought I was the daughter who was abandoned. Today, I began to doubt that I was the person they were afraid of. Ethan took a step forward. Mr. Carter, I suggest you stop pressuring. She has the right to refuse. The father stared at him. You had better find out who you are talking to. I know. A person trying to make his daughter sign documents without legal advice. The father's face turned completely black. He put the folder back in the car. Emily, you will regret it. I have regretted it for too long. He got into the car. Before Madison got into the passenger seat, she turned back to look at me. There was no sweetness in her eyes this time, only a warning. After the car drove away, I stood there, my fingers still cold. Ethan asked, can you take a leave of absence? I need this job. Then go to the county archive after work. Looking for the house. Looking for the house. Trust. Wills. Everything related to Thomas Reed. I looked at him. Why are you helping me? Because someone should have been helped a long time ago. Your mother. He didn't deny it. You'd better remember one thing. Emily, you can't rely on anger alone right now. Then what do I rely on? Evidence. After work, I went to the county archives with Ethan. I still had the smell of coffee from the convenience store. My hair was messy, and my shoes were caked with warehouse dust. He wore a black coat, clean, calm, like he didn't belong to my world. The staff at the archives glanced at us. "What are you looking for?" Ethan said. "Thomas Reed's inheritance records, the property records for Lakeview Road 17. And the trust registration under Emily Carter's name." Hearing the word trust, my stomach tightened. The staff typed on the keyboard, waited for a few minutes, and printed out several application forms. Some records require identification. I pulled out my student ID and driver's license. The photo on the driver's license was taken 2 years ago. Back then, I still had a little baby fat, and I looked like someone who believed in home. The staff looked at them, nodded. "Are you Emily Carter yourself?" "Yes." She glanced at the computer again. The expression became strange. "You never came to check?" "No. Your trust manager receives notification every year." I didn't understand. "What manager?" The staff looked at Ethan. Ethan said, "Please print the public part." Half an hour later, I sat in the corner of the archive, looking at the documents on the table. My grandfather Thomas Reed established a trust fund when I was 8 years old. Beneficiary, Emily Carter. Effective condition, Emily Carter turns 18. Purpose, education, living expenses, medical care, housing, management supervision, Paul Green Law Firm. Alternate supervisor, Linda Carter, Richard Carter. The amount column was partially obscured, but I still saw a few numbers. Enough to buy a lot of bread. I smiled. Then tears fell down. I wasn't moved. I was disgusted. On my 19th birthday, my mother took me to a cheap restaurant. She said she was having financial difficulties recently and could only buy me a small cake. My father didn't appear, only sent a text. "Happy birthday. Don't waste money." That day, my trust fund had already taken effect. They all knew. They watched me worry about textbook fees, saw me work overtime at the convenience store, watched me eat expired sandwiches. They weren't without the ability to help me. They hid my things and then humiliated me with $1. I wiped away my tears with the back of my hand. Ethan didn't say don't cry. He said, "Keep watching." I turned to the next page. The property at Lakeview Road 17 was in my name. It was transferred into the trust for protection after my grandfather's death, to be directly received by me after I turned 18. But there was a note below. Management authority to be transferred upon beneficiary confirmation. I asked, "What does that mean?" Ethan said, "You haven't signed the acceptance documents yet, so the management authority is still with them. The one they're making me sign tomorrow could be this. It could also be the abandonment documents." I took a breath. What if I sign it? You might never get it back. The archive lights were quiet. I sat there, suddenly not feeling cold anymore. Colder than the deepest part. It began to heat up. I took photos of all the files, saved them, backed them up, and sent them to a newly registered email address. Ethan watched me operate and nodded. "You learn quickly." Forced to. When we left the archive, it was already dark. There were a dozen or so missed calls on my phone. Father, mother, unknown number. There was also a message from Madison. "You had better not trust that man. You don't know what you're dealing with." I replied with, "I know. I'm dealing with the things you stole." She didn't reply anymore. The next day, I went to school for a scholarship interview. This scholarship is very important to me. It can cover next semester's tuition and also provide an internship opportunity. My previous tutor said my grades and application materials were strong. I wore the only clean shirt and arrived 20 minutes early. Why? The teacher in charge, Mrs. Collins, saw me and looked very embarrassed. "Emily, why are you here?" I froze. "It's my interview today." She looked at the list in her hand. "Your application has been withdrawn." I thought I had heard wrong. "What?" "The system shows you submitted a withdrawal request last night." I didn't. She turned the computer screen toward me. Under my name, the status read, "Withdrawn. Reason for withdrawal. Personal character issues. Unsuitable for the project." My ears rang. Personal character issues. Mrs. Collins avoided my eyes. Someone submitted supplementary materials. Who? I can't say. A familiar voice came from outside the door. Emily. Madison walked in. 2 classmates were with her. She was wearing a light blue dress, looking clean and innocent. "How are you here?" she asked. I looked at her. "You know." She wore an expression of hurt. "Are you misunderstanding me again?" Mrs. Collins frowned. "Do you know each other?" Madison whispered. "She's my stepsister. Some things have happened at home recently. She's under a lot of pressure." That was a clever thing to say. Don't say I'm wrong. Just say I'm under pressure. It sounds like concern, but it's actually reminding others. She's unstable. I asked Mrs. Collins, "What are the supplementary materials?" Emily. "It's not suitable to talk about this now. If someone uses my name to withdraw the application, I have the right to know." Madison walked over to me and whispered, "Don't cause trouble. This will only make it harder for you." I looked at her. "You said the same thing yesterday." Her expression froze for a moment. I took out my phone and turned on the recording. "Then let's make things clear now. Have you touched my scholarship application?" She immediately retreated. "You're recording." Emily. "Are you crazy?" Mrs. Collins' expression changed. "You can't record here casually." "Then please ask the school to check the system login records." I said, "If the application withdrawal wasn't submitted by me, Someone is using my account. If the school refuses to investigate, I'll call the police. The room fell silent. A hint of panic flashed in Madison's eyes. It was brief, but I saw it. Mrs. Collins finally said, "I'll call the supervisor." 10 minutes later, we entered a conference room. The department head, the scholarship project supervisor, and a woman in a dark green suit were sitting there. I recognized her. Grace Miller, Vanessa's friend. She often appeared in Vanessa's dinner photos. She was also a member of the scholarship committee. The way she looked at me was as if she had been waiting for a chance to humiliate me. "Emily," Grace said, "I understand you're emotional, but the scholarship isn't just about grades. It's also about character." I asked, "What's wrong with my character?" She opened a folder. Someone submitted a screenshot from a convenience store security camera, saying you're suspected of stealing money. I froze. The day before, after the trouble caused by that dirty jacket man, the counter was in chaos. I had opened the cash register to make change. If the screenshot was taken at the wrong moment, it could easily look like I was taking money. Madison whispered, "I don't want to say this, but things have gone missing at home too." I turned to look at her. "Are you sure you want to keep going?" Her eyes were red. "I just hope you don't make any more mistakes." Perfect. She was playing the victim that I am, like a madman. If it were before, I would have rushed to explain. The more I explain, the more chaotic it gets. But last night, Ethan said we can't rely solely on anger. We need evidence. I connected my phone to the conference room screen. This is the full surveillance. I played the video that the convenience store owner just sent me. In the footage, the dirty jacket man grabbed my wrist, and Ethan stopped him. I opened the cash register to get change. The money wasn't missing. The accounts were balanced. I looked at Grace. "Who gave you the screenshot?" Grace's face stiffened slightly. "This is anonymous material. Anonymous material can cancel my qualification." The department head looked at her. Grace didn't speak. I opened the second file. This is the system login record. I asked the IT office to check it. The login IP for withdrawing the application came from dormitory A. Madison's face paled. She lived in dormitory A. I looked at her. "Are you still going to pretend?" Madison stood up. "You don't have evidence, it's me." I haven't finished speaking. I opened a screenshot. It was the anonymous alert email I received last night. I used it to find a temporary email. Ethan helped me find the prefix of the backup email when registering. Madison.Carter. The conference room fell completely silent. Madison stared at the screen, her lips trembling. "That's not me." I said, "Then you should report it to the police. Someone is impersonating your email to frame me, which is also very serious." She couldn't speak. Grace closed the folder. "This matter needs further investigation." I looked at her. "No, my interview is today. My qualifications will be restored today. As for who forged the materials, the school can investigate slowly." Grace sneered. "You think you can order the committee?" "I can't, but I can send the complete materials to the board of directors, the police, and the local news." The department head immediately spoke up. "Emily's interview continues." Madison looked at him sharply. "But Madison, you can step out first." Her face flushed, as if she had been slapped in public, before she left. The sweetness in her gaze when she looked at me finally faded. It was hatred. The interview began. Grace still tried to give me a hard time. "Emily, your family situation is very complicated. Are you sure you can handle the pressure of the project?" "Yes." "You haven't had a stable place to live recently, have you?" "Yes." She showed a hint of satisfaction. I continued. "This proves I need the scholarship more, and it proves I can maintain my grades in an unstable environment. If the project only rewards people with smooth lives, then it's not a scholarship, it's a decoration." The department head lowered her head to look at the materials. Her mouth corner twitched slightly. Grace asked again, "What do you want to do in the future?" I looked at her. "I want to study business and design. I want to build a brand. I also want to build a foundation to provide temporary housing for those abandoned by their families." When I said this, I was stunned myself. I didn't have this plan before, but at that moment, it became clear. I didn't just want to escape a messy home. I wanted to build a door for others to walk through. After the interview, the department head told me on the spot that my qualifications had been restored, and the final results would be announced that evening. As I walked out of the conference room, Madison was standing at the end of the hallway. Her eyes were red, and her fingers were clenched around her phone. "You ruined me," I said as I approached her. "No, I just didn't let you ruin me," she whispered. "Do you think winning once makes you safe? You have no idea what the Carter family can do. Then let them do it," I said. She stared at me. "You'll regret it." I looked at her and suddenly realized how familiar that phrase sounded. My father had said it too. It turned out they only used the same threat. That evening, I received an email about the scholarship. I had passed. I sat on a cardboard box in the convenience store warehouse, looking at my phone screen, and finally smiled. But the smile lasted only a few seconds, because the next text message came from my father. "Richard, starting now, your phone bill and insurance are cancelled. You'd better figure out who has the power to make your life miserable." Then, from the convenience store owner, Mr. Hill pushed open the warehouse door. His face was troubled. "Emily, someone called just now." I slowly stood up. "Who?" He didn't look at me. You don't have to come tomorrow. I was fired. No formal notice. No explanation. No last shift. Mr. Hill stood at the warehouse door, holding my pay envelope. He didn't dare look at me. Emily. I'm sorry. I took the envelope. Inside was $237. That was my weekly wage, plus a bit of cash he had secretly added. Who called? I asked. He was silent. Richard Carter. He still didn't speak. That was the answer. I took off my apron, folded it, and placed it on the box. Thank you for letting me sleep here. He finally looked up. You're a good kid. I looked at him. Good kids don't help. He was stunned. I picked up my bag and left through the back door. It was very cold outside. My phone had already received a notification from the carrier. Account would be suspended. My health insurance had also been cancelled by my father. There are only more than $30 in my bank card. The scholarship won't be issued until next month. Richard didn't hit me, didn't scold me. He just took away everything that could stand around me. One by one. That's more frightening than anger, because he knows very well how vulnerable I am now. I stood in the back alley of a convenience store and suddenly realized something. If I continue to be passively beaten, he will win. Not because he is smart, but because he has money, connections, a house, and a lawyer. I only have a backpack and a folder, but I still have the truth. I dialed Ethan's number. He answered quickly. Where are you? Back alley of a convenience store. What happened? I was fired. Phone and insurance will also be cancelled. He was silent for a second. I'll come over. Don't. I said. Tell me what to do next. There was silence on the other end of the phone again. Then he said. Go to the public library. Back up all files using the computer. Don't use your old email. Open a new email. Change all passwords. Send me a copy of all important materials. Then what? You can't sleep on the street tonight. I can go to school. No, you need a safe place now. I don't have money. I know a youth shelter. I gripped my phone. I don't want to go. That's pride, not strategy. His words stung, but he was right. I didn't have the right to care about appearances right now. Appearances couldn't keep you warm or serve as evidence. Send me the address. I said. That night, I went to the youth shelter in the south of the city. The woman at the front desk was named Maria. She saw my student ID, asked a few questions, and then gave me a bed assignment. The room had 8 beds. Some were crying, some were on the phone, some were staring at the ceiling. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding my backpack close. I used to think the homeless were far away from me. Now I was one of them. I didn't cry, not because I was strong, because I started to think that crying shouldn't be seen by these people. Crying shouldn't be the evidence that Richard and Linda needed. The next morning, I used a library computer to back up my files, trust records, property tax bills, school appeal materials, my father's text messages, my mother's transfer records, Madison's threatening messages. I saved them all and sent them to Ethan. 10 minutes later, he replied. 3 p.m. this afternoon at the Legal Aid Center. Bring all the originals. I arrived on time. Ethan was waiting for me at the door. He wasn't wearing his coat today, just a dark suit. He looked more like a lawyer and more like trouble. Where did you sleep last night? He asked. At the shelter. He didn't show sympathy. That made me feel a bit better. Did you eat? I did. What? Coffee. He looked at me. That's not eating. I'm not here to discuss breakfast. He nodded. Good. Keep that attitude. I followed him into the conference room. A stack of files was already on the table. I looked into Paul Green. He said, my grandfather's lawyer. Also the private lawyer your parents use now. That wasn't surprising. He managed your trust. Yes, he submits a report to the court every year, saying your living and educational expenses are normally covered by the family. I scoffed. $1 a day is also called normal coverage. It's not $1 in the report. He pushed over a copy. I looked down. Annual living expenses, $24,000. Educational expenses, $12,000. Medical and insurance, $8,000. Beneficiary housing support, $18,000. I stared at those numbers. The money felt like it was being stripped off me. Written down as normal expenses. Where did this money go? Part of it went into Carter Real Estate's affiliated account. Part of it went into Linda's clinic. Part of it went into a joint managed account. I looked up. Are they stealing my money together? Currently. Yes. Were they stealing my money together when they got divorced? Greedy people can get divorced, but they don't necessarily stop collaborating. The words were cold and accurate. I sat in the chair and suddenly remembered my mother crying about the pressure she was under. Remembered my father saying I should learn to live on my own. They don't just not understand I'm hungry. They just don't want me to know that I didn't have to be hungry. Ethan continued. There are 3 things you need to do now. First, apply for an emergency trust disclosure. Second, freeze their ability to continue using the trust. Third, don't sign any documents. How long until we win? It could be months. Or it could be years. I stared at him. I don't have years, so we still need them to make mistakes. What do you mean? They're afraid you'll find out the truth. Afraid people will rush. Rushing leaves evidence. I understood. You want me to bring them down. Not what I want. It's what you have to decide. What if I refuse? Then we go through the normal process. Slow, safe, but they'll have time to clean up the traces. I looked down at my hands. My knuckles were red from the cold. There were still bruises on my wrist from the man who grabbed me yesterday. They had already pushed me into the sanctuary. What else could I retreat from? I want it to be fast. Ethan glanced at me. Then you need to learn to act. That afternoon, I received a call from my mother that I took it this time. Her voice was tired. Emily, let's talk. About what? Your dad is too impulsive. He shouldn't have cut off your phone and insurance. I looked at Ethan, who was sitting opposite me. He picked up a pen and wrote on paper. Let her speak. I put it on speaker. Then why didn't you stop him? Mother sighed. You know his temper. It's hard for me too. Haven't you always said you could take care of me? Emily, don't be like this. I'm your mom. I didn't say anything. Her voice softened. I know you haven't been doing well recently. Come stay with me for a few days. Ethan wrote again. Ask for terms. I said, what are the terms? Mother was silent. There are no terms. Then I'm coming over tonight. She immediately said, it's not convenient tonight. I almost laughed out loud. Then when is convenient? Noon tomorrow. Your dad will come too. Well, go over the documents clearly then. You just sign. And everyone will help you. So that's the deal. What documents? Just to confirm you won't pursue past family expenses. You know, the money was all spent on you. I looked at the annual report on the table, and my stomach turned cold. Spent on me. Yes, your tuition fees, insurance, living expenses. You might not remember, but we've been covering them all along. Ethan looked up at me. I said, okay, it'll go. My mother visibly breathed a sigh of relief. Dear, I knew you'd be understanding. Dear, understanding. Those two words should never come out of her mouth again. After hanging up, Ethan said, you did well. I feel like throwing up. It's normal. Are you going tomorrow? Yes, but they might not let me in. What then? You bring a recorder. Record within legal limits. If the location is a public place, that's even better. She asked me to go to her apartment. No, change the location. I sent a message to my mother. I'm not going to a private place. Tomorrow noon. Bridge Cafe in the city center. If you want to talk, come there. My mother replied after 5 minutes. Okay. That night, I slept at the shelter. The girl next to me kept crying. Her name was Nora, 17 years old, kicked out by her stepfather. She asked me, were you kicked out too? I said, yes. Will you come back? I looked at the ceiling. No. Why? Because some doors are closed, not waiting for you to open them. They are reminding you to change the lock. She didn't understand, but nodded. Actually, I didn't understand either until just now. The next day at noon, I arrived early at Bridge Cafe. Ethan was sitting in the corner, across 2 tables from me. His laptop was in front of him, looking like an ordinary customer. I sat in a window seat. A recorder was in my bag. My phone was also recording. A file folder was tucked by my leg. At exactly 12 o'clock, my father and mother arrived. They came together. Yesterday they were living separately after the divorce, but today they sat back at the same table just to get me to sign. How touching. Richard was wearing a dark blue suit. Linda wore pearl earrings, with very light makeup, looking like a mother deeply hurt by her daughter. As soon as she sat down, she reached out to hold my hand. I avoided it. Tears immediately welled up in her eyes. Emily, you really have changed. Yes. After sleeping on the warehouse floor, a person changes, Richard said impatiently. Don't talk about this nonsense. I looked at him. Then talk about something useful. Where are the documents? He took out the blue folder and placed it on the table. Sign it. It'll restore your phone, insurance, and arrange a place to stay for you. How much is the place? He frowned. What? You claimed $18,000 in housing support from my trust fund every year. I want to know where you'll be staying. Linda's face turned pale instantly. Richard's hand stopped. I placed the copies on the table. There's also $24,000 for living expenses, $12,000 for education expenses, and $8,000 for health insurance. You can explain now. Mother lowered her voice. Where did you get this? From the archives. Father looked at me, his eyes seeing me as an enemy for the first time. Who took you there? Does it matter? Emily, you're being used. I opened the folder to look at its contents. Family expense confirmation and traceability waiver agreement that IT states that I confirm all past trust expenditures were used for my personal living, educational, and health needs. I voluntarily relinquish any claims against Richard Carter, Linda Carter, and any related managers. Any related managers. Paul Green. The first looked up. You want me to admit you stole it legally? Linda's tears fell. Don't use the word stole. We are your parents. Then you are even more disgusting. Richard slammed the table. The coffee cup shook. Watch your attitude. People around looked over. Linda immediately grabbed him. Richard, don't do this. She turned to me. Emily, I admit some money wasn't given to you directly, but we spent a lot to raise you too. House, food, clothes, school, none of it is free. I slept at a shelter last night. She fell silent. My father sneered. That was your own choice. I looked at him. You cut off my phone and insurance, got my boss to fire me, then said it was my own choice. He lowered his voice. You don't have evidence. I laughed. This was the best thing said today. Are you sure? He stared at me. My mother suddenly reached out and pressed the folder. Emily, we can talk about this again. Don't make a scene. You're still young. You don't know how many things a lawsuit can destroy. Whose things are you going to destroy? She was caught off guard by the question. I continued. My life has already been destroyed once. Now it's your turn to worry. My father stood up. You think you can win against me with a small lawyer? Ethan didn't look up. He sat in the corner, as if he hadn't heard. I said, I haven't decided who to rely on yet, but I've decided not to rely on you anymore. My father picked up the folder and said coldly, then you can forget about getting anything. He turned and walked away. My mother was still sitting. She looked at me, tears still on her face. Emily, I love you. This phrase might have softened me before. Now I only asked, then why did you make me sign this document? Her lips trembled. Because I didn't have a choice. You did. You chose money. After that statement, her tears stopped. At that moment, I saw the real Linda. She is no longer fragile. No longer like a victim. Her gaze at me is cold and unfamiliar. You will find it very difficult to live without a family. I said, I already have. She stood up, picked up her bag. Then you keep trying. After they left, Ethan walked over to my desk. Did you get the recording? I did. Did he tell the boss to fire you? He said I don't have evidence. That's useful too. I looked out the window. My father and mother were arguing on the street. Both looked angry. Will they bite each other? I asked. They will, but they need more pressure. How do you apply pressure? Ethan sat down. You leak some information, but don't reveal everything. Let them not know exactly how much you have. I don't want to just defend. Then you attack. He opened his computer and handed it to me. The screen showed the page of Paul Green Law Firm. Paul Green is the key. He handled Thomas Rhee. EDS will and also your trust that if he falls, Richard and Linda will panic. How do we make him fall? First, make him think you're willing to talk. I looked at him. Do you want me to pretend to sign? Pretend to be willing. Then what? Put everyone in the same room. Richard, Linda, Vanessa, Paul Green. Let them talk among themselves. I was silent. This was dangerous, but I had had enough of being deceived by them separately. Father had one set of words. Mother another. Vanessa another. Madison another. Each of them pretended to be innocent. If we wanted to expose them, we had to get them all together. I said, arrange it. Ethan looked at me. Are you sure? Sure. They'll attack you. They've been attacking me. This time it will be worse. I looked at him. Then let them be worse. The harsher it is, the easier it is for them to show their true faces. He smiled faintly for the first time. Now you're like a plaintiff. I didn't laugh. I don't just want to be a plaintiff. What do you want to be? The end. For the next 2 days, I acted on Ethan's advice. I messaged my mother, saying I was willing to negotiate again, but it had to be with a lawyer present. My mother replied quickly. She said Paul Green could come. My father also messaged, saying this was my last chance. Vanessa called me. I answered. Her voice was laced with false tenderness. Emily, I know we didn't get along before, but you need to understand. Richard is under a lot of pressure. I understand. Good. You'll understand once you sign the papers. And we'll still be a family. A family. Those 3 words coming from her sounded like moldy cake. Is Madison coming too? I asked. She hesitated. She doesn't need to be involved. She spread rumors about me and falsified school documents. She should apologize. Vanessa's voice turned cold. Emily, don't be too extreme. Then don't let her come. I hung up. A few minutes later, Madison messaged, you're so pathetic. Do you think getting some money back means someone will love you? I replied, I don't need you to love me. I need you to pay me back. She didn't reply anymore. The meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon at Paul Green Law Firm. Ethan said he would be there as my legal representative. If they refused, he wouldn't let me in. On Friday, I wore a white shirt and black pants. Those were the only clothes that looked formal. The cuffs of the shirt were a bit worn, so I covered them with my jacket. Before going to the firm, I stood in front of the mirror in the shelter's bathroom, looking at myself. My face was still pale, with dark circles under my eyes, but my eyes were different. Before, I always looked down, afraid people would see how messy I was. Now I looked up. Being messy wasn't my fault. The people who stole from me were the ones who should be looking down. Paul Green's firm was on the 14th floor in the city center. The receptionist's floor was very shiny, and his photos were hanging on the wall. He smiled like someone trustworthy. When I and Ethan walked into the conference room, everyone had already arrived. Richard was sitting in the main seat. Linda sat to his right. Vanessa sat to his left, wearing a diamond ring on her hand. Madison was actually there, sitting in the corner with a troubled expression. Paul Green sat at the far end of the table. He was in his 50s, with gray hair and very thin glasses. When he saw Ethan, his brow furrowed slightly. Walker, he said, I didn't expect you to get involved in such a family squabble. Ethan's tone was calm. It involves trust fraud, so it's not just a squabble. The temperature in the conference room seemed to drop suddenly. Paul Green smiled. Young man, be careful with your words. I sat down and placed the file folder on the table. My father looked at it. My mother was also looking at it. Vanessa's eyes flickered. They all recognized this file folder. I was so foolish back then. Such an obvious thing. Yet I hadn't opened it for years. Paul Green pushed over a file. Emily, today we're just clearing up a misunderstanding. Your parents have paid a lot of money for you in the past. Now they want you to confirm the facts to avoid unnecessary disputes in the future. I opened the file. Still that retroactive exemption agreement, just softer wording. I asked, what if I sign? Paul Green said. You'll get stable housing, insurance restored, and living assistance restored. Your father is also willing to continue supporting your education with my trust money, Richard said coldly. That's also the money we manage, Ethan said. The trust funds don't belong to the manager. Paul Green looked at him. We don't need a law class here. I raised my hand, signaling Ethan not to speak yet. I looked at Paul Green. The first only ask one question. Why didn't I receive the living expenses I reported to you over the years? Paul Green remained unfazed. Because when you were a minor, the expenses were paid by your guardian. After I turned 18. Transition period. After I turned 19. He was silent for half a second. Management delay. I laughed. You give professional names to stealing money, Richard yelled. Emily. I looked at him. Don't like the word. Then change it. Appropriation. Fraud. Falsifying reports. Which one do you prefer? Linda's face turned as white as paper. Vanessa spoke up. Emily. You're being too harsh. Richard has sacrificed so much for you. I turned to her, including letting Madison have my room. Madison looked up sharply. Vanessa said. That's because you don't live at home often. I don't live there often because you won't let me. You're too sensitive. I nodded. Yes, I'm especially sensitive to the person who stole my money. Paul Green tapped the table. Enough. Emily, if you don't want to sign, there's no point in continuing today. He reached for the papers. I held on to one corner of the document. No, I'll sign. Everyone fell silent. Ethan looked at me. He knew I was acting, but his gaze remained tense. My father leaned back in his chair, as if he had finally won. My mother visibly breathed a sigh of relief. Vanessa's lips curled up slightly. Madison looked at me, eyes filled with disdain. Paul Green handed me the pen. A wise choice, he said. I picked up the pen. It was heavy. I looked down at the signature line. Emily Carter. They had used this name for many years. To claim money. To write false documents. To force me to submit. Now they wanted me to sign it myself. I looked up. Before I sign, I need to confirm a few things. Paul Green grew impatient. You can ask. First, is Lakeview Road 17 in my name? Paul Green said. Technically. Second, does my trust become effective at 18? Conditionally. Third, have you, Richard, and Linda been jointly managing the trust funds in recent years? Linda immediately said. Not jointly. I just signed some necessary documents. Richard looked at her. Linda. Vanessa also looked at Linda, her gaze cold. Paul Green interjected. These details don't affect today's agreement. I continued to ask. Fourth, if I sign, can I not pursue the past money? Paul Green said. You're confirming that past expenditures were reasonable. That means we can't pursue it. He didn't answer. Fifth, can this document protect all of you? The conference room fell silent. Richard's fingers tapped on the desk. Emily. Don't waste your time. I placed the tip of my pen on the paper. All eyes were fixed on my hand. I slowly wrote the first letter, E. Then I stopped. I looked up, looking at Paul Green. This document is fake. His expression changed for the first time. What are you saying? I put the pen down. Now, it's my turn to ask questions. After I finished that sentence, the conference room was so quiet you could only hear the air conditioner. Paul Green's hand still stopped on the desk. He looked at me, and for the first time, the eyes behind his glasses lost their calm. Emily. You'd better know what you're talking about. I pushed the document to the center of the table. I do. Richard sneered. Can you understand legal documents? I can understand dates. I turned to the third page, pointing to the last line that it says here that I already received independent legal counsel on my 18th birthday and confirmed the abandonment of prosecution rights. Paul Green said. That's the standard clause. The issue is, I never even saw a lawyer that day. Linda retorted immediately. You're mistaken. That day, we took you to see someone. I looked at her. On my 18th birthday, you took me to a cheap restaurant. You bought me a cake. Richard didn't come. He only sent a text message. Linda's lips moved, but she didn't say anything. I continued to say, more importantly, the document says the law firm is Baker Legal Aid, but I checked. That organization wasn't established until 3 months after my birthday. Ethan placed a printed document on the table. It showed the organization's registration date. Paul Green's expression darkened. Richard looked at Paul. What's going on? Paul immediately said. Perhaps there was an error when the document template was updated. Error? I asked. An error that just happened to write that I had abandoned my right to pursue legal action. An error that just happened to protect all of you. Vanessa's fingers tightened slowly. Her diamond ring pressed into her skin, leaving a white mark. Madison sat in the corner, her face growing paler. I looked at her. You know, don't you? She immediately said. I don't know. You know the file folder. When you saw the tax bill at the convenience store, you asked me how I could have that. Madison lowered her head. Vanessa said coldly. Emily, don't drag Madison into this. She's just a child. I laughed. She's a year younger than me. When she framed me, you didn't think she was a child. Vanessa's expression changed. Linda suddenly said. Enough. Emily. We are here today to talk about solutions, not to fight. The solution is for me to shut up and for you to keep taking the money. Richard slammed the table. That's what we deserve. With that statement, everyone looked at him. Even Paul Green frowned. Richard realized he had said something wrong. But it was too late. I looked at him. Deserve. He gritted his teeth. I've supported you for all these years. You gave me $1 a day. You ate at my place. Lived under my roof. Used my last name. I nodded slowly. Finally. You're getting to the point. You think I owe you because I use your last name. Richard's gaze was hard. You shouldn't have gotten anything from Thomas. Linda turned her head sharply. Richard. My heart sank. That was the wrong thing to say. Not you don't deserve it. Not that's not yours. He said shouldn't have. As if he knew the deeper reason. Ethan also raised his eyes. I stared at Richard. Why shouldn't I get it? Paul Green interrupted immediately. This question has nothing to do with today. Of course it does. I said, if Richard thinks I shouldn't inherit, he must have a reason. Richard fell silent. Linda's face turned ashen. Vanessa looked at Richard, then at Linda, and suddenly let out a laugh. You haven't told her yet, Richard whispered. Vanessa. She looked like she had finally caught something she could use to fight back. You two have been hiding it well. You've been treating me like an idiot. Linda's voice trembled. Don't talk about this here. Vanessa looked at me. Emily, do you think only we have wronged you? Your mother is the one who's the best at acting. Linda stood up. Shut up. Vanessa stood up too. No, I've had enough of you pretending to be pitiful for all these years. Richard yelled. Sit down. You don't have the right to order me around. Vanessa pointed at him. You're calling her not a Carter, while using her money to fill the holes in your company. Richard, you're the dirtiest of all. The meeting room exploded. Paul Green finally lost patience. Be quiet. I didn't move. I just watched them. It turned out Ethan was right. Greedy people won't truly unite. As long as the pressure is high, they will bite each other first. I picked up the documents on the table and turned to the next page. Paul, you submit reports to the court every year, saying my trust fund is used for my living. Who gave you these expense records? Paul looked at me coldly. All records are signed. Whose signature? Your guardians. I looked at Linda. She avoided my eyes. I looked at Richard again. His expression was grim. I said, both of you have signed. Linda quickly said, I just signed the documents Richard gave me. I didn't know what was written inside. Richard sneered. You don't know. Where did the money for your clinic renovation come from? Don't you? Linda's expression changed instantly. Isn't the money for your company's cash flow also from the same account? Vanessa stared at Richard. You said that was a bank loan. Richard didn't say anything. Vanessa's expression grew colder. You used her money to keep the company afloat. Yet you made me believe you had assets. I looked at Vanessa. You're angry not because they stole my money. You're angry because you didn't get your share. She stared at me sharply. But this time, she didn't argue. Paul Green began collecting the documents. This meeting is over for today. Ethan finally spoke. Paul. Sit down. Paul narrowed his eyes. You don't have the right to order me. Ethan placed a file on the table. I do have the right to inform you. We have applied to the trust court for emergency disclosure. You need to keep all relevant records. If you destroy any documents, that will be obstructing the investigation. Paul glanced at the file, his expression changing slightly. You move fast. You gave us enough reason. Paul stared at Ethan. Your mother was very meddling back then. The air turned cold suddenly. Ethan's gaze changed. It wasn't anger. It was something more dangerous. Very quiet. Very deep. I turned to look at him. He didn't look at me, just at Paul. You finally admit you remember her. Paul's lip twitched. Of course. I remember. A tactless assistant. Ethan's voice was low. She was investigating the revision of Thomas Reed's will before she died. Richard immediately said, this has nothing to do with us. Linda's hands were trembling. Paul leaned back in his chair. Walker, you'd better not bring personal emotions into work. Then explain one thing. Ethan pulls out an old email printout. A week before my mother passed away, I sent you an email asking you to explain why the appendix to Thomas Reed's will was replaced. You didn't reply. Paul looks at the paper without touching it. I've never heard Ethan talk about this before. His mother wasn't an ordinary death. She might have been in trouble because she discovered this Lee. A chill runs down my spine. Paul says, an old email doesn't prove anything. Maybe. Ethan says, but if Emilia's trust fund was embezzled and Thomas' will was altered, then it's not a coincidence. Richard suddenly stands up. Enough. I won't listen to a small lawyer making up stories here. I look at him. You're scared. He looks down at me. What did you say? You're not angry. You're scared. His fingers clench into a fist. I continue. If this is just a misunderstanding, you should be looking at the ledgers now, not blaming each other. Linda finally broke down. Richard, you said it would be fine. Richard turned around. You want to push this on to me. It was you who brought it up in the first place. After Thomas died, you said the money couldn't just be left unused. You said Emily was too young. She didn't know anything. My heart felt like it was being grabbed. Richard's face turned ashen. Linda, shut up. She couldn't stop. You also said, wait until she's an adult. Just sign a few documents. You said Paul would handle it. Paul abruptly stood up. Mrs. Carter, watch your words. Linda looked at him, her gaze suddenly turning fierce. What are you afraid of now? Weren't those documents prepared by you? Paul's expression turned completely cold. Vanessa smiled. Great. Finally someone is telling the truth. Madison whispered. Mom, don't say anything. Vanessa ignored her. I picked up my phone. Checked the recording time. 32 minutes. Enough. But Ethan's expression remained uneasy. He knew this was just the beginning. Paul lowered his head, adjusting his cuff. I suggest everyone calm down today. Everything said can be misunderstood. I said. No, I recorded it very clearly. Paul looked at me. You recorded it? Of course. Richard rushed over to try to take my phone. Ethan blocked him. Don't touch her. Richard roared in anger. She's illegally recording. Ethan said coldly. Before the meeting started, my assistant sent everyone written notice. The email stated that both parties could record the conversation themselves. Your lawyer didn't object. Paul's expression turned extremely unpleasant. I finally understood why Ethan had asked me to check my email before the meeting. He wasn't just asking me to act. He had already shut the door tight. Richard pointed at me. You ungrateful person. I stood up. I'm not signing anything today. I won't sign anything in the future. I want the complete ledger, the complete will, the complete trust records, and I want the keys to Lakeview Road 17. Richard sneered. You're dreaming. Paul whispered. Richard, stop talking. But Richard was already out of control. You won't get that house either. Thomas hid things there before he died. Don't you think I don't know? As soon as she said this, Paul's expression changed. Linda's eyes widened too. I immediately asked, what did he hide? Richard seemed to snap out of it and closed his mouth. Ethan stared at him. Thomas left something at the lake house. Paul quickly said, this is over. He picked up the file and turned to leave. But a woman appeared at the door. She was wearing a gray suit and had a work badge around her neck. Paul Green. Paul stopped. The woman took out a file. I am an investigator with the State Bar Association. Rebecca Stone. We have received preliminary complaints about conflicts of interest and accounting fraud during your management of the Miners Trust. Please cooperate with the investigation. Paul's face drained of color. Richard turned to look at Ethan. What did you do? Ethan said calmly. I submitted evidence. Paul looked at me, his eyes finally no longer like a lawyer's, like an enemy. He lowered his voice. You don't know what door you've opened. I looked at him. At least it's my own door. Paul was taken to the next office by Rebecca. Richard and Linda started arguing. Vanessa called her lawyer. Madison sat in the corner, head down, as if she had discovered for the first time that her home wasn't made of gold, but rather rotten wood painted over. I and Ethan left the firm. In the elevator, leaning against the wall, I realized my hands were trembling. Ethan looked at me. You did well. I shook my head. I'm not afraid of them. I'm afraid though mass death is also related to this. Ethan didn't deny it that we need to go to Lakeview Road. Now. The sooner the better. The elevator door opened. I had just stepped out when my phone vibrated. An email came from a stranger. It was unsigned. The subject line read, if you want to know who Thomas Reed saw before he died. The body contained only one sentence. 10 o'clock tonight. Go to Lakeview Road 17. Bring the key. Don't bring the police. The safe is behind the fireplace. Below that was a photo. In the photo, the living room of the lakefront villa was dimly lit. An old safe was placed in front of the fireplace. On the safe, pressed was a yellowed photo. The photo showed me as a child, sitting in my grandfather Thomas' arms. And on the back of the photo, there was a line of text. Emily, if they start to fear, it means you're close to the truth. I stared at the photo, my fingertips turning cold. Who sent this? I asked. Ethan took the phone to look. Anonymous email. Could this be a trap? Very likely. Then are we still going? He looked at me. Would you like the safe answer? Or the honest answer? The honest answer. If the safe is really there, they might get there first tonight. I understood. After Richard blabbed, everyone knew there was something on Lakeview Road. If I didn't go, the evidence might disappear. If I did, someone might be waiting for me. No clean choice. I said, let's go. Ethan didn't try to talk me out of it. He just said, I'm driving. Well, notify Rebecca Stone. Let her know where we are. Then I'll contact a private investigator to wait nearby. We won't call the police to enter. But we're not stupid either. Okay. The road to Lakeview Road was long. The city lights grew fewer. Outside the car window, it turned into shadows of trees and the damp, cold lake breeze. When I was little, I'd come here in my grandfather's old car. Back then, I'd sleep in the back seat, waking up to see the lake. Thomas would give me hot chocolate. He didn't talk much, but had listened to my little school stories that I asked him. Grandpa, why does Dad always dislike me? He was silent for a long time, then said, some people don't like you. Not because you're not good enough. It's because your existence reminds them that they're not good enough. I didn't understand then. Now every word feels like a knife. When the car stopped outside the lakeside villa, it was already 9:40. The villa was much older than I remembered. The white exterior was peeling, vines climbing full the windows. The lake was dark in the distance. The wind blew through the trees, like someone was whispering quietly. An old lock hung on the main gate. I took out the key from the file folder. It was a bronze key that I had always carried. My mother said it was just an old souvenir. I never thought it could open a real door. The key was inserted. A click. The door opened. My throat tightened. This house had been waiting for me, yet I had slept on the warehouse floor for so long. I pushed the door open. There's a dusty smell in the house. A wooden smell. And a hint of damp lake water. Ethan turns on the flashlight. The light sweeps across the living room. The old sofa, The dusty bookshelf. The fireplace. There's a painting hanging above the fireplace. It's a twilight scene by the lake. I walk to the fireplace and crouch down. There's a thin metal edge in the brick seam. Ethan puts on gloves and pokes around. Finding the mechanism. The wooden panel behind the fireplace gently pops open. There really is a safe inside. My heart is racing. The safe isn't big, black, and has rusted corners. It has a numeric keypad. Password. Ethan asks. I shake my head. I don't know. He looks at me. What would Thomas use? I think for a moment. My birthday. Too obvious. My grandfather's birthday. I'm not sure. Lakeview Road 17. No. I crouch in front of the safe and suddenly remember childhood. When Thomas taught me to fish, I always couldn't remember how to tie the line. He smiled and said, Emily, numbers have to be meaningful, or people will forget. I asked, what numbers are most meaningful? He said, the day you first lived. I didn't understand it then. My mother later told me I was born premature and spent time in the ICU. The doctor said I almost didn't survive the first night. My maternal grandfather always called me the day after my birthday. He said, you've won another year. I entered the date one day after my birthday. The screen lit up. Error. I took a deep breath. It wasn't the day after the birthday. It was the day I was discharged. I remembered. Because my maternal grandfather always gave me a card every year. The card said, the day you came home. I entered the date. Click. The safe opened. Inside was a hard drive, several letters, a thick file, an old video cassette storage card, and a string of keys. At the top was a letter. The envelope said, Emily, only open this when you have no way out. I sat on the floor, opening the letter. The paper had turned yellow, but the handwriting was still steady. Emily, if you're reading this letter, I probably can't protect you in person anymore. I know you'll get hurt, and I know you'll feel abandoned, but you must remember, you are not the one they want to discard. You are the one they fear. Richard is greedy. Linda is weak and selfish. Paul Green is more dangerous than them. He knows the law, and he knows how to write crimes into documents. I left the trust on Lakeview Road. Not to make you rich. It was to give you a choice. A person without choices is treated as an object. If they force you to sign, don't sign. If they say you owe them, don't believe them. If they say you don't belong anywhere, come here. This is your place. I couldn't stand it anymore. Tears fell on the paper. This time I didn't hold back. I wasn't crying for Richard and Linda. I was crying for the version of myself that was once protected but kept in the dark. Ethan didn't speak. He stood by the window, giving me space. I wiped my tears and took out the documents. Inside were copies of the original will, trust establishment documents, and several bank transfer records. Each was dated, with account numbers and amounts listed. Richard's company, Linda's clinic. Paul Green's administrative account. There was another name that made me pause. Daniel Reed. I frowned. Who is Daniel Reed? Ethan walked over and his expression changed noticeably when he saw the name. Investigative journalist. Do you know him? I looked into it. He died in a car accident. Same year as my mother. My heart sank. Is he related to Thomas? Ethan turned to the next page. It was an employment agreement. Thomas Reed hired Daniel Reed to investigate the accounting issues at Carter Real Estate Company. The date was 6 months before Thomas' death. I continued reading. There was another photo. In the photo, Daniel Reed stood at the entrance of a lakefront villa. He was about 30, with black hair and deep eyes. A younger Linda stood beside him. Her gaze at him wasn't that of a casual friend. My hand tightened slowly. Why is there a photo of my mom with him? Ethan didn't answer. He didn't know, or didn't want to say immediately. I picked up the memory card again. Ethan took the card reader out of his bag and connected it to the computer. The screen lit up. There was only one video file inside. The file name was For Emily. He clicked on it. Thomas appeared on the screen. He was sitting in this living room. His hair had turned much whiter than in my memory, and his face was also poor, but his eyes were still clear. Emily, Thomas said in the video, if you see this, it means I failed. I couldn't take you away from them while I was alive. I covered my mouth. Thomas continued. Richard discovered the structure of the trust. He wanted me to change the will and give him control. I refused. Linda came to me, saying she didn't feel secure. She said she would take care of you, but I didn't believe her. He coughed a few times in the video. I had Daniel Reed investigate Richard. He found signs of money laundering and embezzlement at Carter Company. Daniel also discovered that Paul Green was helping Richard W. It falsified accounts. Ethan's face grew colder. Thomas said, if I suddenly die, don't believe the story of natural death. If Daniel is also involved, don't believe it's an accident. If Margaret Walker is involved, don't believe it's a coincidence. I turned to look at Ethan. He stood very straight, but the veins on the back of his hand were tense. Margaret Walker, his mother. Thomas continued. Emily, I've divided the evidence into 3 parts. One is in this safe. One is given to Daniel. The third part, hidden in the basement wine cellar of Lakeview. The password is the day you come home. Don't open it alone. Don't believe Paul Green. The video paused for a few seconds here. Thomas looked at the camera, his gaze suddenly softening. Child, you don't need to prove yourself worthy of love. You were already worthy the day you were born. If no one gives you a home in the future, you build one yourself. Then, open the door to those like you. The video ended. I sat on the ground, unable to move for a long time. The room was only filled with the sound of the computer fan. Ethan whispered, "We're going to the basement wine cellar." I nodded. We found the basement door behind the kitchen. The door was rusty, but the keys in the safe could open it. The stairs were narrow, and the air was damper. Ethan went first, and I followed behind. The basement wine cellar had been empty for many years. There were still a few bottles of old wine on the shelves. On the far wall, there was a brick of a different color. Ethan knocked on it. It was empty inside. He used a tool to pry it open. Behind the wall was a metal box. I had just reached for it when a loud noise came from upstairs. Someone was coming in. Ethan immediately turned off the flashlight and pulled me behind the wine rack. The footsteps were heavy. It wasn't just one person. Then I heard Richard's voice. "She must have come. The door is open." Linda's voice also rang out. "Are you crazy? We shouldn't be here." Richard whispered, "If she gets what she wants, we're all done." Another voice came. "Vanessa, explain yourself." "Richard, how much have you been hiding from me?" Richard cursed. "Now isn't the time for this." Madison arrived too, her voice trembling. "Mom, I want to leave," Vanessa said. "Shut up." I looked at Ethan. They were all here. Faster than we expected. Richard walked to the fireplace and quickly noticed the safe was open. "Damn it." Linda almost cried. "She took it." Richard roared. "I should have gotten rid of this place sooner." Paul Green's voice suddenly appeared. "You should have listened to me." I froze. Paul was here too. His tone was completely different from that morning. No lawyer's politeness, only coldness. Richard said, "Aren't you the one taken away by the investigators?" "It was just questioning. I'm not dead yet." Paul's footsteps slowly approached the basement door. "Did you see the underground wine cellar?" Ethan mouthed at me. "Don't move." I gripped the metal box. Linda said from upstairs, "Paul, we can't continue anymore. It's enough." Paul sneered. "Now you want to quit? Why didn't you quit 20 years ago? 20 years ago, I stopped breathing." Richard said, "Don't bring up the past." Paul said, "Of course I'm bringing it up. Thomas saw Daniel before he died. Daniel saw Margaret Walker before he died. Everyone wants to be a just person. And what happened? They all died." Ethan's face turned cold in the darkness. I grabbed his wrist. "He can't run out. If he runs out now, we don't have a chance." Paul continued, "Find it. Burn it. End it tonight." Footsteps came down. 1, 2, 3. I put my phone on silent and opened the live streaming app. This was the account I registered for school appeals. There weren't many followers. Only classmates and a few local news accounts. But enough. I pressed start streaming that I only wrote one sentence for the title. "If something happens to me tonight, please watch until the end." The screen was very dark, but the sound was clear. Footsteps were getting closer. Ethan looked at me. And for the first time, worry was evident in his eyes. I shook my head. "I can't hide anymore." Paul walked to the center of the basement and turned on the flashlight. The light almost hit us. Richard also came down. He was holding an iron rod. I stepped out, looking for me. Richard turned around abruptly. Paul's flashlight shone on my face. "Emily," he said, "give me the box." I held up my phone. "I'm live." Everyone froze. Linda upstairs screamed. "What?" Vanessa rushed to the stairs. Madison followed behind, her face as white as a ghost. I looked at the camera, then at them. "This is Lakeview Road 17. This is the house my grandfather Thomas Reed left me. Now Richard Carter, Linda Carter, Vanessa Carter, and Paul Green have all broken in, demanding I hand over the evidence." Paul immediately said, "Turn it off." I didn't move. "You just said Thomas, Daniel Reed, Margaret Walker are all dead. You said they all wanted to be just people." "Paul, won't you say it again to the camera?" Paul's face was terrifyingly grim. Richard roared, "Give me the phone." He rushed over. Ethan blocked me. Richard swung the iron pipe. I screamed, "Ethan." The pipe hit Ethan's shoulder. He grunted and took a step back. My mind went blank. The next second, Richard rushed over again. I grabbed a bottle from the liquor rack and threw it to the ground. The glass shattered. Red wine spilled everywhere. Richard slipped on the floor and hit the wall. Ethan gritted through the pain, pinning him down. Paul turned to run. Vanessa at the staircase blocked him. "What did you do?" she asked. Paul shoved her away. Madison suddenly shouted, "Enough." Everyone looked at her, crying. She pulled out her phone. "I have chat logs. My mom made me frame Emily. Richard told me to delete the home surveillance. Linda told me not to mention the trust. It's all here." Vanessa stared at her in disbelief. "Madison, are you crazy?" Madison cried. "You people are crazy. I don't want to go to jail." She wasn't having a moment of clarity. She was scared. But to me, the motive doesn't matter. The evidence does. Sirens were heard outside. Ethan whispered, "Rebecca must have called the police." Paul's expression changed completely. He looked at the metal box in my hand, then at the staircase. He suddenly rushed toward me. Ethan tried to stop him, but with his injured shoulder, he was a split second too late. Paul grabbed my wrist, his grip very strong. "Give me." I almost dropped my hand in pain. Just then, Richard got up from the ground and surprisingly pushed Paul. "Don't touch her." Paul fell over the liquor rack. I froze. Richard looked at me, his face twisted. For a second, I thought he finally showed a bit of a father's instinct, but the words he spoke completely shattered that illusion. She can't die here. If she dies, everyone will investigate me. So that's why. Not to save me, to save himself. When the police rushed in, the basement was in chaos. Paul was pinned down. Richard was handcuffed. Linda sat on the stairs crying. Vanessa kept saying she didn't know anything. Madison handed her phone to Rebecca Stone. Ethan leaned against the wall, his face pale. I ran over. How are you? Shoulder. He said, not broken. Are you sure? Not sure. I wanted to curse at him, but realized my hands were trembling. He looked at me. Did I ask the box still there? I looked down. The metal box was still in my arms. Yes. He breathed a sigh of relief. As the police led Richard upstairs, he suddenly stopped, turning back to look at me. There was no remorse on his face, only bitterness. You think you won, he said. I didn't answer. He laughed. Emily, you're not my daughter at all. The house fell silent. Linda looked up at him, the last bit of color draining from her face. A ringing filled my ears. Richard looked at me, as if finally driving the last knife into my heart. You're not Carter. You never were. I thought I wouldn't be hurt by Richard anymore. I was wrong. It turns out one can't overestimate oneself too soon. That sentence drove me down, like a nail, to the basement of the lake house villa. You're not my daughter. I watched Richard being led away by the police, unable to say anything. Linda didn't argue. It was worse than Richard's words that if he was lying, she would scream. She would cry. She would call him cruel, but she was just sitting on the stairs, her face as white as a dead person's. I slowly turned my head to look at her. Is what he said true? Linda's lips trembled for a long time. Emily, now is not the time for this. I smiled. Of course, it's never the right time for you. Ethan was injured and taken to the hospital by ambulance. I was also asked to get checked. On the way, I held that metal box, as if holding the last piece of ground. The hospital lights were very white. The doctor examined Ethan's shoulder. There was no fracture, but the soft tissues were severely damaged. He sat by the bedside, looking very pale, and still asked me if I had given the box to Rebecca. I said, shut up. He looked at me. Are you okay? Not okay. It was the first time I didn't say I'm fine. He said, then don't pretend. I sat in the chair, looking down at my hands. If I'm not Richard's daughter, who am I? Ethan was silent. I looked up at him. Have you suspected for a long time? I had doubts when I saw Daniel Reed's name. Why didn't you say so? Because doubt is not evidence. And now we need evidence. I laughed coldly. You always only talk about evidence, because evidence won't betray you like a person would. That sentence made me quiet. Yes, feelings betray. Bloodline betrays. Titles betray. Evidence doesn't. That night, Rebecca Stone came to the hospital to find me. She brought a sealed bag. The metal box is registered. You can view a copy with your lawyer. What's inside? Bank records, tapes, and a private investigation report. Daniel Reed's. She nodded. Yes. I looked at Ethan. His face was cold. Rebecca continued. There's also a paternity test appointment slip. It wasn't completed. My heart sank. Whose and whose? The child of Linda Carter and Daniel Reed. I closed my eyes. The answer stood before me, but I still needed him to say it himself. The next day, I met Linda at the police station. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair was messy, and she looked 10 years older. Across the table, she looked at me, and finally, a hint of fear was in her eyes. Not fear of me getting hurt, fear of me asking questions. I sat down. Ethan sat next to me. His shoulder was wrapped in a bandage, and he insisted on coming. I didn't stop him. I asked Linda, who is Daniel Reed? Her tears fell immediately. Emily. I was too young back then. I despised that line. Everyone likes to say they were too young when they've made a mistake, as if youth could pay for greed and cowardice. I said, answer. Linda trembled her voice. He was a journalist, and also the one Thomas brought to investigate Richard. What was your relationship with him? She covered her face. I loved him. Am I his daughter? She cried harder. I didn't hand her tissues. Speak. She nodded. Yes. The room fell silent. My chest felt hollow. Richard wasn't my father. I wasn't the true daughter of the Carter family. Suddenly, many things made sense. Richard looked at me with disgust. Vanessa's rejection of me. Linda's avoidance. And why Thomas protected me so tightly. I asked, does Richard know? Linda said, he suspects. He never confirmed. But he hates you. He says you're my shame. Then why didn't you take me away? She looked up at me, her eyes full of weakness. I didn't have money. Richard has a house, a company. I was afraid. So you left me with a man who hates me. She cried. I thought he would at least take care of you. He gives me $1 a day. She couldn't speak. I continued asking, how did Daniel Reed die? She froze. In a car accident. Do you believe it? She didn't answer. Ethan pushed a copy onto the table. It was the last page of Daniel's investigation report. It said, Richard Carter and Paul Green are suspected of jointly transferring trust assets. Linda Carter may be aware. Thomas Reed is facing a direct threat. If I get into trouble, contact Margaret Walker. Ethan's voice was low. 3 days after Daniel died, my mother received this report. 2 weeks later, she died in a car accident. Linda covered her mouth. tears streaming down her face. I didn't know it would turn out this way. I really didn't. I looked at her. But you knew the money was stolen. She didn't deny it. You knew I should have received the trust fund when I turned adult. She lowered her head. You knew I had nowhere to sleep. Crying, she said, Emily, I'm your mom. This time, I wasn't angry. I just felt that the words were hollow, like a broken cup that couldn't hold anything. You're not my family, I said. Linda looked up at me. I stood up. You're just the one who gave birth to me. I left the police station when it was bright. The sunlight hit the steps, hurting my eyes. Ethan walked beside me. Are you going to take a paternity test? He asked. Yes, even though the answer is already very clear. I need evidence. He looked at me. I said, you taught me that. 3 days later, the results came back. Daniel Reed was my biological father. Richard Carter wasn't. I held the report, sitting in the living room of Lakeview Road 17. The police had cleared the scene. The house was still dilapidated, but the area in front of the fireplace was clean. The letter Thomas wrote to me was on the table. I thought I would break down, but I didn't. The real pain wasn't knowing Richard wasn't my father. The real pain was realizing that all these years, I had been asking someone who didn't want to acknowledge me to give me a little love. I put the report down. Ethan sat opposite me. He didn't pressure me to talk. I said, I'm still Emily Carter. You can change your last name. It doesn't have to change either. That's right. This last name, Carter, wasn't given to me by Richard. It's the name I used when I survived. It doesn't belong to him alone. Ethan nodded. Then let it belong to you. The investigation moved quickly, not because the world suddenly became fair, but because there was too much evidence. And also because the live stream had caused such a stir. My live stream that night was recorded. Schoolmates shared it. Local news followed up. The headlines were glaring. Abandoned girl discovers $1 million trust fund mystery case. Law firm suspected of embezzling orphan girl's assets. Old case on Lakeview Road raises 3 death mystery points. Richard's company account was frozen. Linda's clinic partner cut her out. Paul Green was suspended by the State Bar Association and is under criminal investigation. Vanessa quickly issued a statement through her lawyer, saying she didn't know the details of the trust. But the chat log submitted by Madison show she at least knew I owned property and repeatedly urged Richard to get Emily to sign as soon as possible. She can't wash her hands of it. Madison came to see me once. The location was a coffee shop outside THE school. She was dressed very normally, not like how she used to be. She sat across from me, holding a paper cup in her hands. I'm not here to ask for your forgiveness, she said. Then why are you here? My mom told me to push everything onto Richard and Linda. Would you? No. I looked at her. She gave a bitter smile. Not because I've changed. Because I don't want to go to jail for her. At least this time you're honest. She lowered her head. The school made me transfer. That's none of my business. I know. She was silent for a long time. I really hated you before. I know. Because you have nothing, yet you always seem cleaner than me. I didn't speak. Madison's eyes reddened. I took your room, took your last name, took your interview opportunity. One thought: as long as you disappeared, I would truly be Carter's daughter. I looked at her. You didn't want my life. You were just afraid you wouldn't be loved either. Her face went pale instantly. The words were too accurate. Accurate to the point of being cruel. She stood up. I won't contact you again. Okay. She walked to the door, then stopped. Emily, Vanessa still has a copy of Richard's ledger. She kept it with her lawyer. You make Ethan look into her. With that, she left. I didn't call her back. Some people provide evidence, but it doesn't mean they deserve reconciliation. I don't need to turn everyone who has hurt me into a friend. 2 weeks later, things completely spun out of control. Vanessa, to protect herself, handed over Richard's private ledger. Richard turned on Linda, saying she had actively requested the transfer of trust funds. Linda admitted to falsifying expense records under Paul Green's guidance to secure a reduced sentence. Paul Green remained silent at first, until Rebecca Stone found his old recording. The recording came from a metal box in an underground wine cellar. It contained the last conversation between Thomas and Paul. Though Matt's voice was weak but clear. Paul, the first no, you changed the appendix. Paul was younger then, his voice more urgent than now. Thomas, you misunderstood. The things I gave Emily, no one can touch. You're being too stubborn. She's just a child. Precisely because she's a child, I must protect her. Richard won't let this slide. Thomas was silent for a few seconds. Then tell Richard the first won't let him get away with it either. The recording cuts off here. The second segment is a recording left by Daniel Reed. He says he has submitted a report to Margaret Walker. If something happens to him, it proves someone at Carter Company is behind it. It doesn't immediately prove murder, but it's enough to restart the investigation. Ethan sat listening to that recording for a long time. I didn't comfort him that I know comfort can be light sometimes. I just sat beside him. In the end, he said, I've been looking for years. Found it now. Not enough. Then keep looking. He looked at me. Aren't you afraid? I said, afraid. But I'm more afraid of going back to the old ways. On the day of the temporary hearing, many reporters blocked the entrance. I walked in a black suit. This suit was bought with scholarship advance funds. Not very expensive, but it fit well. Richard appeared with hand on. He saw me, his gaze venomous. Linda sat on the other side, crying non-stop. Paul Green didn't look at me. Vanessa sat in the back, wearing sunglasses, as if that could block the scandal. The hearing wasn't long. The judge issued a temporary order. Suspend Paul Green's any management authority over the trust. Freeze Richard Carter and Linda Carter's assets related to trust funds. The actual control of Lakeview Road 17 is returned to Emily Carter. Appoint an independent audit agency to settle all past expenditures. That I sat there, hearing every word fall. They weren't like the victory music in movies. They were more like bricks, laid down again under my feet. I finally had ground beneath me. As I walked out of the court, Richard suddenly shouted at me in the hallway. "You think Thomas really loves you? He just hates me. You're nothing but a tool for his revenge." I stopped in my tracks. Before, his words would pierce through me. Not anymore. I turned to look at him. Even if you're right, he at least left me the house, the money, the evidence, and the choice. Richard's face twisted. I continued. "And you gave me $1. The officer took him away." Linda tried to get closer to me. "Emily, please, Mom really knows she's wrong." I looked at her. She was crying genuinely. But real tears don't equal genuine repentance. "You're not regretting hurting me," I said. "You're regretting the scandal." She froze. I didn't look at her again. After leaving the court, I went to Lakeview Road. The house was still dilapidated. The roof leaked. The stairs needed repairs. And the kitchen was unusable. But it was the first time I stood in a place knowing no one could kick me out. I held the keys and opened the door. Sunlight streamed through the windows, dust floating in the light. Ethan stood behind me. "Are you planning to sell it?" he asked. "No. It'll be expensive to fix up." "I know. Even though you've regained control, the financial audit will take time, so I'll fix it up gradually." I walked to the fireplace. There used to be a safe hidden there. Now it was empty, but I didn't feel empty. I said, "I'm going to turn this into a short-term residence." Ethan looked at me. "Who for?" "For people like Nora, those who are kicked out of their homes, have no money, no bed, and don't know where their next meal is coming from. It will be hard. I know. Harder than getting the trust back. I know." He paused. "Then do it." I turned to look at him. "You're not going to me to be realistic. I've said it before. Reality is evidence. The evidence shows that when you're determined, it's harder to stop you than most people." I smiled. It was the first time I'd really smiled in a while. 3 months later, the audit results came out. Richard and Linda had embezzled and misappropriated far more money than I had imagined over the years. Some assets were recovered. Some were beyond recovery. Paul Green was formally charged. Richard faced multiple charges, including fraud, embezzlement of trust assets, and threatening witnesses. Linda accepted a plea deal, giving up part of the clinic shares to compensate for the trust's losses. Vanessa didn't go to jail, but she lost Richard's house and her high society friends, what she cared about most. Happened to be the least reliable. Madison transferred to another state. She didn't contact me again. I didn't reach out to her either. Ethan continued investigating the old case of the car accident involving Margaret Walker and Daniel Reed. Progress was slow, but it wasn't non-existent. Some truths come late, but late doesn't mean they won't come at all. I returned to school. Many people's gazes toward me changed. Some showed sympathy. Some admired me. And others were just curious about the gossip. I didn't care much. Sympathy wouldn't fix my roof. Admiration wouldn't pay my tuition. Gossip wouldn't define me. I continued attending classes, applying for programs, and studying business and design. At night, I would go to Lakeview Road to confirm progress with the construction crew. When the first room was finished, I stood at the doorway for a long time. White walls, wooden bed, clean sheets, a small desk, and a warm yellow desk lamp. Not luxurious, but safe. Nora was the first to move in. She stood at the doorway, carrying a ragged bag, her face full of uncertainty. "Can I really live here?" she asked. I handed her the key. "Yes. I don't have any money. This isn't a hotel." "Then what is it?" I looked at the new sign on the door. "Emily Carter Foundation." I said, "This is where you start over." Nora took the key. Her eyes red. I didn't hug her. Not all wounds need hugs. Sometimes, a key is more useful. That night, Ethan came. He brought 2 cups of coffee and a file. "The foundation registration is approved," he said. I took the file and saw the name on it. Emily Carter Foundation. I suddenly remembered many months ago, sitting on a cardboard box in a convenience store warehouse, looking at scholarship emails, feeling like I would just be living for tomorrow. Now, I have a house, a foundation, my own team of lawyers, an unfinished battle, and a future. Ethan stood by the porch, looking at the lake. "Emily, I have something I want to say." I looked at him. "If it's legal advice, we can talk about it tomorrow." He chuckled softly. "No." He turned around, his expression very serious. "I don't want to be your savior. You never were." "I know," he said, "and I don't want to be your only home." I didn't say anything. He continued, "You've already built a home for yourself. You don't need anyone to take you away. I just want to ask, would you be willing to let me be the place you're willing to come back to?" The wind blew from the lake. This statement didn't exert pressure, didn't claim ownership, nor made cheap promises. It just stood there, waiting for my choice. I walked up to him. "Ethan, You know it's hard for me to trust people right now. I know, and I won't just hand myself over to you because you've helped me. I don't want that kind of gratitude. It'll be slow. I can wait. I looked into his eyes. There was no pity, no control, only clarity and patience. I said, then you can stay and finish your coffee. He smiled. Is this the beginning? This is the trial period. Fair that we sat on the porch, drinking coffee that had grown cold. The lake in the distance was quiet. I remembered the $1 my father gave me. I remembered the $1 my mother transferred to me. I remembered the warehouse floor, the shelter's bed, the fake documents in the conference room, the live broadcast in the basement, Richard saying I wasn't his daughter. Before, I thought those things would forever weigh on me. Now they still are. But they are no longer locks. They are evidence. Proof of where I came from. A year later, Richard's verdict came. He was sentenced to prison. Paul Green was also convicted, losing his license to practice law. Linda moved out of the city. She wrote me many letters. I only read the first one. It was filled with I love you. I regret. Please give mom a chance. I didn't reply. Her regret was her business. My life was my business. I didn't change my last name. Emily Carter was the name they used to scam money, sign fake documents, and control me. Now it hangs at the foundation's entrance, is on the scholarship list, and is written on the cover of my brand proposal. They stole this name, but they don't have the right to decide what it ultimately represents. On the day the house on Lakeview Road was completely repaired, I stood at the door taking a photo. White exterior walls, blue window frames, lake breeze blowing through the trees. 5 girls stood at the door. Nora was there too. She has gone back to school and will come back to help on weekends. She asked me, Emily, did you used to live here too? I looked at the house. No. Then why do you look like you're coming home? I thought for a moment. Because home isn't necessarily the place you grew up in. Then what is? I hung the key back on the wall. A place that won't kick you out just because you're poor, useless, or unloved. She nodded, as if she really understood. In the evening, Ethan came to pick me up for dinner. He stood by the car, wearing a dark coat, holding a simple bunch of white flowers. I looked at the flowers. What's the occasion? It's the 1-year anniversary of you first having control of Lakeview Road. You remember? Of course. The evidence shows this is an important date. I laughed. You really aren't very romantic. But you're accurate. Accuracy is also an advantage. He handed me the flowers. I took them. This time, I wasn't afraid to accept. Not because I was sure I would never be hurt, but because I already knew, even if I was hurt, I wouldn't go back to crawling on the ground. I had the key. I had the evidence. I had the name. I had the door I built myself. Once, I only had $1 a day. I thought that was my entire worth. Then I learned that giving me $1 wasn't because I was only worth $1. It was because they were afraid I would discover I originally had a choice. And choice is more dangerous than money. It can make a discarded person end up. It can make someone without a bed build a house. To make a girl they call troublesome become their worst fear. I locked the door of Lakeview Road. As I turned, the sunset fell on the lake surface. Ethan asked, ready? I looked ahead. Ready. This time, I wasn't leaving home. I was leaving from my own home.